Well, we're going to bring on Mike Wiener, who's a member of the Republican House minority. Hopefully that becomes majority, because we can't have a one-sided government in the state of Minnesota. Not that Republicans solve all the answers, just the fact that we know what the trifecta is like. This part of the show is brought to you by our good friends at John Galt Mortgage Company. They are people that think like you and me. Their social media pages, top notch. They're still long on Facebook, but they are on all social media. And if you are looking to buy a home, you got to find, I'm guessing unless you pay in cash, you're probably looking for someone to finance that home. Give the good guys at John Galt Mortgage Company a chance at financing a home. Go to johngaltmortgage.com. They're actually licensed in so many states now, I can't even keep count of it. It seems like a new state every week. But they are from western Minnesota, the Chermak brothers. So these are good patriots, good local boys, and they're running a damn good company. By the way, they've already started and run a very successful real estate marketing company called the Platform Marketing. So this is the second company they've launched, and they use it as a way to promote the Liberty ideals, which is obviously embedded in the name, John Galt Mortgage Company. Mike Wiener, welcome to the show. I think this is the first time I've had you on the show. Have you been in the studio before? Have you done another show on?
I've never done another show here.
Gotcha. All right. Well, welcome. I think you were telling me Mike wanted to come on because you heard our segment last week on the HRCC, and you had some things to say about that.
Well, my name was invoked.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
His name was invoked several times. He gets a chance to respond, right?
No, it was kind of funny that day. After the recording, I had text and phone calls and people asking questions and so forth. And I said, well, maybe the best way to do this is to come on your show and just explain my experience. And you know, Walter Hudson brought up some points and stuff. But I think my experience is a lot different.
So let's explain to people. The HRCC is the House Republican Campaign Committee.
Yes.
Having Walter on the show, one of the things that was really interesting, because Walter also is a freshman legislator, came in same class as you, although I would say Walter has been way more political over the years, because he obviously he's been around the block. He was on radio for a while. That's just so funny. Nathan, you didn't have to crawl. Nathan's coming on set to get his phone and literally has to crawl. He thinks he's going to be on camera. This is a hang. Even if you came on the show, I would have ran with it. You know, it's so funny. I wish I had that on video. He's being so respectful.
I almost got my phone out to record it, but I'm eating wings here.
Good seeing you, Nathan. Oh, that's the best thing about, like, you know, if we're just regular media, we would just keep looking at the camera, ignore the thing. I'm like, oh no, I got to time him out on this one. That was so funny.
That was great. By the way, I thought I had a stalker coming up to attack me.
Yeah, did you think, like,
yeah, there was
seriously?
a noise, and all of a sudden a gentleman is crawling at me.
No. Not so covertly. He was in a suit, so it didn't seem that threatening. Holy crap, that was funny. The things that happen on this show. HRCC is a campaign committee. Walter even seemed a little confused by this, but it's not actually the caucus. So you become a legislator, you join a caucus, or you decide if you're going to join a caucus. There's two main caucuses right now in the legislature. You got the Democrat and the Republican caucus. Somewhere in there is a campaign committee, and by rule, they can only have one per party per body of the legislature. So the Senate has two, Democrats and Republicans have each one, and then the House has a Democrat and a Republican one, and you can't have any other ones, and they're actually political party units. But from our vantage point, there is no rules, there's no governance. It's just loosely defined, and because it's loosely defined, as we've seen in this election cycle and your election cycle, they will go after candidates that are more grassroots focused, and they're spending big donor and special interest and lobbyist money to try to take out these grassroots candidates. Am I getting any of this wrong?
Well, you know, you mentioned Walter and his experience and so forth. And yes, he's been around the political system for a lot longer than I have. Really, I got involved because of COVID was a big part of it. And my dad, he used to give me grief. I would complain about stuff, and he'd always say, you can't complain too much if you don't get involved. Mm-hmm. So the last election, before the last presidential election, I started going to the BPOU meetings and learning about what was going on, and almost left at one point in time because I just saw there was no action, there was nothing getting done. Decided not to, stuck around, ended up becoming active in the BPOU, became vice chair, learned about what was happening in Morrison County. That's how I got to know Nate Wiesenberg. So long before he even planned on running for office, I got to know Nate. And I just wanted to have more voice in what was going on. For those of you who don't know, my wife and I have 9 kids together, and I am just scared of what's going to happen to the future, their possibilities, if I didn't get involved. So I said, we're watching the redistricting and kind of assuming that there was candidates in different areas. And when we got district to an area that had no sitting representative, John Poston and Ron Crecia shared our county.
Yeah.
So I was on if I was on my property, if I walked across the road, then I was in Poston's area. So I was right on the line. And with redistricting, neither of those were in the new area. So I looked at my wife and I said, I think I'm going to run for office. And she goes, are you serious? I said, as a heart attack. She goes, what's your chance of winning? I said, not a hope in heck. I really just wanted to get involved, learn the process, and, figure out how things worked. So my experience then was getting a list of delegates, which was very challenging. I thought that, when we have people who get involved, they would be kind of welcomed. Let's bring people in. Let's make this experience that we want to build up the Republican Party in the state of Minnesota. We want new people to come in, and maybe there's going to be different viewpoints on stuff, but nobody really asked me, what's your viewpoints? It was instantly, we're not going to give you delegate lists. And we struggled before the endorsing convention. I got one list right away from one county, but most of them I didn't get until just a week or 2 before the endorsing convention. So the cards are stacked against me. And I thought, okay, I'm learning
So people
a lot.
understand, like an endorsing convention is made up of people who become delegates on the caucus. Usually caucus is sometime in February. Conventions are usually March, April at the latest.
Right.
So in order to, try to win the Republican endorsement, you have got to get a delegate list. Otherwise, you don't know the audience. And so I think what you're articulating is one of the tools used against grassroots guys is they want to run. They say, I want to be a candidate. The Republican Party should be giving them delegate lists so they know who they're going against. In this case, they don't give you a list, and you would imagine your opponent is getting it. This happened at a great level at the 7th Congressional District, where Steve Boyd was never given a delegate list, and Michelle Fischbach was. It's like, well, boy, ain't that a great advantage?
Yeah, so I think we may want to touch on it later. I've talked with Mike a number of times that there is a movement. There's definitely legislators and party staffers and others that want to try to do away with the endorsement process, go to a primary. But right now, while there's an endorsement process, if the grassroots people who tend to be conservative, just like the same with primaries, if they actually learn, which is much harder to get the word out to the full audience primary votes, but when people, especially these people that go to caucus, become delegates, when they talk to the actual candidates and they learn there's 3 people running, it's like, oh, one of them's been a politician for a long time. This other guy, he and his wife have 9 kids. He's run a successful business, supported his family, the type of guy that our founders would dream of to be a representative. They're going to pick them. And so they're going to try to disadvantage them, not give them the list, not give them access. We had a Rumble rant. His wife, Mike's, has her hands wrapped around him. Huh?
What? That doesn't make sense.
I don't,
Not right now.
not at the
He's
moment.
not in the room right now. What does that mean? Well, you better do another Rumble rant to
Yeah,
correct.
we're going to need to clarify. That $5 didn't really get the point across. All right.
Well, I guess my point of explaining some of this is just to give a little bit of history and background. I haven't been around a lot as long as others have, but my experience, and I don't know if this is normal or not, but so I get through the endorsing convention, get the 60%, and I am primaried. Okay? As soon as I got the endorsement, I did.
Well, you were going up against the same guy that primaried you, or was it a different guy? I honestly can't remember at this
You
point.
beat him in
It's
the
2 years.
endorsement, right?
I beat him in the
Yeah, okay.
endorsement, and he went to primary. So I had gotten a phone call from a member of the steering committee, introduced himself.
Wait, you know who's on the steering committee?
Well, I didn't even know what the steering committee was. at that time.
HRCC steering committee we're talking about?
I know that's a joke.
So I had gotten a phone call and introduced himself, a few words, and basically said, well, are you Action for Liberty? And I said, well, that's what I've been labeled as, but I don't even know what Action for Liberty was. So that explains how green I was in politics when I came into this. I didn't hear back. Well, I guess there was one phone call after that a couple weeks later, but I didn't hear back from the steering committee until 2 weeks before the general election. And then I was the same person asked me the question, or called and said, is there anything we can do to help you?
Do you know? Do you remember who this
No.
guy was?
I do.
You do. You don't want to out this person.
I mean, I don't know why they would ask if there's anything they could do to help you. Literally, I'm sure. I'm sure.
That was the point.
I'm sure you know that they had weekly Zoom meetings, right? And
At that time, I didn't.
Well,
And
but I mean,
I'll
now you do.
explain.
Like I was on there, right? I was on these Zoom meetings. There's great candidates like Wendy Phillips and Stephen Swoboda who were endorsed, right? And they got to be invited to the Zoom meetings. Every once in a while, I'd jump on these Zoom meetings, and I'd always see Bob Lunan, Sheldon Monson, like Bishofsky's opponent and Pam Altendorf's opponent. They were all on these Zoom meetings, right, on Monday. So if somebody called and said, how can we help? They literally had your opponent on their weekly Zoom meetings every freaking week. So that's completely disingenuous.
Right,
But
so I'm
anyways, yes.
giving you this information to just give you the background of my experience.
Yep.
And 2 weeks before the election, that person called me back and said, do you need any help? Can we do anything to help you win? I said, this is an odd phone call.
Before the general
We're
election
2 weeks
or
before
primary?
before the general.
And you didn't have a Democrat opponent. Come on, this is
Well, I had an independent.
Yeah,
he was listed as, but
So
I said this is an odd phone call.
Yeah. So essentially, what you're saying here is this person wanted to see you fail, even though you're the Republican endorsed candidate.
Well,
that's what you're alluding to here.
once again, if we're going to win this state,
Yeah.
do we do that by pushing people out?
Well, of course not, right? But that's what you're alluding to is this person did not embrace you. You're the Republican endorsed candidate. Didn't want to help you, right?
Well, they fought you the
I would say
entire
that's an-
primary.
Okay,
I
so
would say that's an
what I
accurate
don't understand is
depiction.
why wouldn't you say who that is? Because this is a public official. This is a state representative. I presume someone who's still there.
I believe discretion is up to me, and if I choose to say don't say that name, I'll say
I
that.
mean, I trust what you're saying is correct. I just feel like we'll never solve these problems when these people live in darkness. And that's kind
Sure.
of part of what we do on the show is expose these people because they're going to continue doing these tactics until they get exposed. They hate the light. So anyhow, we got a failed candidate.
Phil Kennedy, give us the damn
There he
name.
goes. He reiterates my point. Give us the damn name. Well, now the people want it too.
Yeah,
So-
Phil Kennedy also says have Walter come back with the names in the steering committee. So, and Phil Kennedy says Heinzman.
Well, that's what my thoughts are. It's probably Josh Heinzman, but I can think of a ton of
we
different
do
people
have
that would be
to
that.
definitely we'll touch on before this ends here. Something I alluded to with Walter mentioned, but we have to figure out the way to move forward, whether it's naming a name or not. It's like there has to be something that needs to be done, and whether it's like I know Walter, others might say, well, we got to win this election. Okay, that's fine. We got to win the majority, but the caucus is going to meet within days of the election, probably happening, right? So whether there's a majority or a minority, whatever happens, there's got to be a plan in place by November 6th or whatever by the time the caucus meets, because if there's no plan and the same leadership is elected, the type of leadership that we can't even name, but they do these corrupt things, people aren't going to trust it anymore, and it's going to be really bad for Republicans.
Well, you got to be
until that
nuts to
happens.
trust it at this point. I mean, they've shown
Exactly,
us their
and that's
cards.
what I know. It's something we might get to later, but that's what happened with our conversation with Walter. He kind of laughed about it a little bit. I mean, I know he probably took it somewhat seriously. We said, I look forward to a spirited debate with my competition, as if somebody runs against him because he gives money to the HRCC or something. And it's humorous, but I mean, at the same time, if there's people across the state that say, look, got no issue with how Walter votes. I got no issue with Walter's great speeches in the House. For what I have issue with is we're going to continue to lose elections to Democrats, and we have very, very minimal resources. They spend seven times, outspend a 7-1 or 30-1 or whatever it is, and we can't spend half of our money against Republicans. And until somebody has the balls, has the guts to stand up and say, you know what, we're not going to let these people. Because we know who they are. Mike knows who they are. Walter knows some of who they are. And Walter admitted on the show. He said, "Yes, we don't want to spend money in red districts against endorsed candidates." So okay, we all agree. So if people stand up and make sure we elect new people and not the people that make phone calls 2 weeks before the election, then we can solve it that way. And short of that, everybody's going to have to get a primary challenger until it gets solved.
You get a primary charge. You get a primary
anybody
charge.
that doesn't stand up, the people that are standing up for the grassroots, they say we want to win and we don't support spending money in red districts and against endorsed candidates. Then you don't get a primary challenge.
All right, so Mike,
Going back to that,
Yeah,
I
go
guess
back.
the reason for not saying a name, I have a reason for not doing that. And, will I at some point in time? Yes, I'm sure I will. At the same point, I want to bring up the story because
bring up
I want
the
to give a little bit of background of my experience. Now, you go through the whole process, you win the primary or the endorsement, then the primary, and then the general election, and now what happens? So there's a training that goes on for new members, and you end up going after the general election to an HRCC meeting. And you walk in there that first day as a new member who has been excluded from everything. And there's elections that take place.
Okay, hold on. You attended an HRCC meeting or a caucus meeting?
HRCC. Well, a leader of the. Caucus, because we choose leadership.
Are you a member of the HRCC?
Well, you are by being elected.
Are there bylaws?
That's a good question, because I've actually requested, what is our Constitution bylaws? And the reason I question that is because I look at the system or what we're doing right now, and I say, we have some problems here. We really do. And I saw this election cycle, some of the same things that are coming up. And I'll invoke Jimmy Gordon's name.
Yep, very good.
Jimmy
case.
Gordon was an endorsed candidate. And I said, we should be bringing the endorsed candidates into caucus. I don't want to see a single candidate go through what I had to go through. We don't build a team. We don't bring people together by tearing other people down. So how do we make this system better? So I invited him in, talked to other ones, candidates that had got the endorsement. And truth be told, even me coming on this show right now, I'm going to get attacked for just being on here.
Yeah. So dangerous. It's so dangerous to have a conversation, right?
To have an open conversation. I can talk with Democrats, I can talk with liberals, but if I come on this show,
Anyone who doesn't come on the Truth Hurts gets a primary challenger.
We laugh about how David Hand won't even come on our show, won't discuss anything with us publicly, and meanwhile he does podcasts with the Democrat chair. It's like, wait a second, shouldn't you be coming in? What is the fear you have of talking to people that literally could be in your base, that the people that you should be bringing in? The grassroots is pissed off. They can't fundraise amongst the grassroots, and there's a reason for that, which is problematic when it comes to HRCC, because when you look at their books, they're getting wealthy donors, lobbyists, and special interests, and they're then bundling that money and putting it towards these races. So you don't know right now, as a matter of fact, if a bylaws or a constitution exists for the HRCC.
I have requested it, and I have not been given anything.
And then you requested it with, I assume, caucus leadership, because are you aware of who's the HRCC leadership? Because it is its own legal entity.
It is its own. It's what what I've been told is it's considered an affiliate group.
It's not an affiliate group. It's actually a political party unit. It's a special status.
Rumble rant here. Carol Hexum says, is there a plan to abolish the caucus?
Well, caucus is a different thing, and many people can caucus. The HRCC has this very specific legal ability. They can actually coordinate with candidates. They can get $50, or actually now it's $75 back. Donors can get $75 back when they donate to the political party unit. They're subservient to the actual MNGOP, just like every BPOU and congressional district is, because they fall under the umbrella. They're not just an affiliate. They're actually a political party unit. And every political party unit that I am aware of has very distinct leadership, bylaws, and a constitution. And somehow now I've had two supposed members of the HRCC on the show in 2 weeks, and they don't know of any bylaws or constitution.
Well, to be fair, Mike's been asking for it for 2 years.
No, I know. He knows I'm being fair. It's it's unbelievable. And then meanwhile, they spend against the Republican endorsed candidates.
Brad Ganser says, I appreciate Mike's courage to come on and talk about the hypocrisy in our party. It's been happening for many years. Razzle Dazzle agrees with you, Jake. The people need to know more about this HRCC. Get Jesse on it. Whiskey Tango Foxtrot. We might ignore that one for a while. A little too much graphic homosexuality. Let's see here. Whiskey Tango Foxtrot. Heinzman and Utke went straight to primary, and Moore tells you they don't care about the people. Bill Danksman is the unnamed individual who called you currently being sued for voter intimidation and election interference.
So let's go back to talking about I look at this, and the numbers were brought up before. And this, I like numbers. I say people can confuse the heck out of me, but numbers make sense. And you brought this up because when the Democrats can outspend us $7, $8, $9 to $1.
Yep.
And I went through and I looked at every candidate that had a primary in the House 2 years ago. And I add up all those numbers, and the outside money that I could find were well over $1 million. $1.3 million, I think, is what I came up with. And somebody else had said there's probably like $1.7 million. How much of an effect would that had on swing districts, on races we could have won? So the logic and the strategy here makes no sense to me. We are spending all of this money, all of this time, fighting amongst ourselves and losing this state. I would love to win this state back and retire.
Yeah.
I would love to go back to hunting and fishing, raising my kids, sitting out on the patio in the morning with a cup of coffee, watching the cows, and thinking that our state is in good hands. But when we're fighting amongst ourselves like this, we can do better. And that's my problem. So you've got military experience. How does it work when the enlisted men are fighting? I mean, isn't there rules against this?
When you say they're fighting amongst themselves, or what do you mean by that?
Well, most of the military conduct, you can't fight, physical fist fight, to a certain extent, right? We don't want conflict in the.
You're saying enlisted men fighting amongst themselves, like in a unit?
Yeah.
Yeah, obviously, you know, I mean,
Okay.
if it got to a point where it was assault, there's the Uniform Code of Military Justice that would deal with it, but otherwise, yeah.
Sure, and the reason for that is when you got conflict between people inside of a group, it creates larger issues.
Yeah.
That's the point.
Well, yeah, and I think this morale is going to exist. It looks like we have a rumble right here. Let's
Another
do that
rumble.
real quick.
Y'all just let Rep Wiener tell his story and not pressure him for names, please. Love Minnesota.
Yeah, it's fair, you know, calling you out. I mean, I guess
No,
I don't feel like...
understand that.
Bill didn't
like
ask
I
for a
said-
name. He just asked if he was currently under investigation for voter intimidation. And
Oh, she's saying that let Representative Wiener tell his
Yeah.
story. I thought you were reading it like, oh, come on, you're not pressuring him hard enough. No, that's what I
no.
am. I'm not going to go in. In fact, I pretty much guess who it is. I bet it is that Oompa Loompa. Wink. No. No, I mean, I do. There's going to be fights internal in the party. That's okay. That's natural. To me, oh, geez. Okay, go ahead. Rumble Ramp.
Rumble Rant, if Mike can add, he would be better suited as the chair of education rather than Ron, who doesn't know the difference between endorsement and rating.
Insider baseball on that one.
That is referring to, I guess, a hearing that I think happened, was it 2 days ago on Tuesday? There was a hearing. Apparently, it's still there. This is still on. It's he had a hearing because of claiming false endorsements. It's still being investigated under 211B complaints.
Yeah, because I think Ron Krisha cheated to get
Yeah,
reelected.
well,
and I
he
think
did,
when
yep.
you look at 18 people voting a different way, sending out a mass mailer, 6,000 households, saying that you're the endorsed Republican candidate when you're not, seems to be cheating that probably changed the election.
So, yeah,
just like burying the Hunter Biden story, right?
So Tuesday-
or 51 intelligence officials saying it's Russian disinformation. These kind of things, when it's a close race, make
every
a
bit.
massive difference.
It took every bit. I mean, all the HRCC mailer after mailer after mailer saying things like Ron Krisha is the only conservative in the race. I mean, I don't know what standard we hold these people to, but the folks that come up with this, Heinzman and company, to say Ron Krisha is the only conservative, and that's a lie. You know,
it's subjective, but
it's not really subjective.
Well, yeah, I agree, but it's subjective in the sense that what does a conservative mean? I have a very simple definition: is you don't believe in big government. So when you vote for all these unconstitutional omnibus bills, how can you look at me in the face and say you're a conservative?
How
'Cause
can
it's
you
like,
say that any way that Ron's more conservative than Diane, let alone the only?
well, because
conservative
Diane's
in the race?
untested, so you know it's subjective, right? You're making a subjective choice.
It'd be pretty difficult to claim that
She
she's
could
the
be.
only
Well, it wouldn't be the
conservative in
first time
race.
someone gets. I'm
Yeah.
not shitting on Diane by any
Yeah.
means. I'm just saying, the point I'm trying to make is these are natural arguments that will happen inside the party. It seems to me that's what the endorsement process
Well,
is supposed
anybody
to be.
that sees that though knows that that's dishonest.
And it sounds like what you're calling for, Mike,
It's
which I think is fair, is if someone wins an endorsement, then stay the hell in this race. Because if you're spending $1.3 million, that's probably the difference of Tom DePel winning in Senate District 41 and the trifecta is not installed by the Democrat Party. Because, I mean, $1.3 million
You think?
would have been very influential in that election.
even if they just didn't spend so much, big portion of that was spent against him anyway.
Yeah, I didn't just mean that. I mean, just
But yeah.
you're spending $1.3 million, you know, and
That is a lot of money. And like I said, when your opponent, when the Democrats can outspend us 7-8 to 1, $9 to 1, every penny we're spending fighting amongst ourselves
yeah.
is a penny we're not spending against the Democrats. So, and it's not just the money. You know, when you're out in a primary, and my district is extremely red. It's 75% Republican, 76%. So if I have to go out and door knock, if I have to go out and send flyers, mailers, if I have to be on the radio, which I love doing the radio anyways, but I should be helping another district. And this is something I started promoting the first year, is adopt a rep.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems pretty simple to me. St. Cloud is an area that we should flip. We can flip.
Mm-hmm.
Any district around there should adopt that rep candidate, whoever gets endorsed, help them by door knocking, mailers or whatever we can do to go
Mailers,
down
you
there.
mean like develop a mail plan prior to mid-September?
Well, maybe I shouldn't say mailers. We can go down there and door knock.
I mean,
we
surely
can go help put up
the
signs.
HRCC had developed a mail plan for prior to mid-September, right? Right?
There's one of those races that we should have been focusing on rather than focusing on primaries.
Right.
And if we have staff door knocking in sync or in a primary race for Ron Krisha or Brian Johnson or somebody else, that's time that they're not spending door knocking in an area that we can flip.
Right.
So you're taking valuable resources in an area that's heavy red and not
Here.
spending it on time in an area that we can flip.
Okay, so to your knowledge, and you are a state representative, you are in the Republican caucus. It's question marks if you're in the HRCC. Who's making these decisions?
Well, and that came up at when Walter was talking as well. And it was said that there was a vote on that. I do not recall a vote on that. And now, if there's rules and bylaws, and like you're saying, a political entity, I think you called it, or political party, the HRCC is, well, then isn't there also minutes?
You would think so. You would think there'd be a secretary of minutes. Seems to be every BPOU does that, right?
So I thought about that after talking to Walter, is we should just request the minutes then to find out if that vote was taken.
Yeah.
I do not recall a vote taking place. And as a matter of fact, I've talked to some other legislators and said, do you remember this? And nobody that I've talked to yet remembers
Well,
that.
I think on the show, didn't Walter even say that he didn't recall a vote?
He didn't. He said maybe it happened.
What I know what the reference was to is that Representative Schultz he attended something that the Morrison County Republicans put on the week before the election, and some people were rightfully upset and giving him the business about why is the HRCC spending money. I think specifically there's Dan Schilling, I think, said like I had 4 mailers for Krisha in my mailbox on Saturday. 2 of them were from the HRCC. 3 text messages in the last 24 hours. People hit unsubscribe and they're still getting the text messages from the HRCC. Can't open up Facebook without seeing the ads. Why are we spending these thousands and tens of thousands of dollars for Ron when he's not endorsed? And then Representative Schultz said,
And they're getting mailed at the special rate because of the Republican Party of Minnesota, which, by the way, don't they have to follow the rules of the Republican Party of Minnesota? Rhetorical question, Mike.
HRCC should
because it's
follow
like
them, too. They're
there's
a
no
party unit,
HRCC rules, so how would we know, right?
But they asked him, about why are we doing this? Why are we spending money in red districts? We should be trying to defeat Democrats. And Representative Schultz said, well, we voted on this 2 years ago, and I agree with this, that we need to protect the incumbents because we're the ones in there fighting in the trenches. So we decided this 2 years ago, we're going to protect the incumbents. Well, I don't know who has decided. I mean, I know Isaac's in leadership. So if we take him at his word and there was some vote somewhere in some smoke-filled back room or possibly not smoke-filled back room, whatever, that people voted on this. I mean, I know when I asked Lisa Namath face-to-face at State Central in December, this last December, are we going to spend money again? I hear we're not going. I wanted to let you look me in the eye and tell me we're not spending money against Republicans in these red districts and against endorsed candidates. And we're going to save that money and spend it against Democrats. And she looked me in the eye and said, yes. Well, was she a part of this vote that Isaac is referencing? Did the vote happen? Like, who voted? Who made this vote?
Well, and you would imagine she is, but this is the thing. It just seems so obvious to me. What's happened is you have a political party unit of the MNGOP that's been hijacked by just a few insiders.
But Isaac,
and then this is what we said with Walter. Walter said, yeah, sure. Walter said there's no establishment, or he had those in tweets, maybe backed off of that. But it's like, isn't that the establishment? A few people not talking to the people that are supposedly donating, right? Because a lot of you guys donate into the HRCC and act as if you guys are all part of this thing, but they're not, and they're making these decisions on your behalf. That's imagine that happened in every BPOU. People would be up in arms about this stuff.
So you bring up the BPOUs, and that was really the next point, or where I would like to go with this next is our BPOU handbooks. If you go look at them, most of them say you're supposed to support the endorsed candidate.
Yep.
That's part of the process. That was part of the issue that happened up in Ottertail. They didn't support the endorsed candidate. Right. You got delegates that got kicked out for that premise. Our state party has has guidelines in there for supporting the endorsed candidate. So now if you have aspects that are not supporting the endorsed candidate, causes distrust, right? All of a sudden, we have an issue because who's following the rules here and who doesn't? And then that every society has to have a sense of justice. And if we're not being treated the same as someone else, or if certain candidates are getting, help and others aren't, there's a sense of injustice, and that trickles down. If we ever want to win this state, I feel like there's conversations being taken place now that we have to get rid of the endorsement and go straight to primary, which I think is a really horrible idea. If we ever want to win this state back, we actually have to support and build up our grassroots. We have to get that activism, because look at the Democrat Party. They do a very good job of invigorating their base, right?
And then just subsequently ignoring them.
Exactly.
We still want you, Bernie supporters, but he can't do it,
So
they're so interesting, and it's amazing. It's amazing how many of them don't call them out. But I'd be like, we're here with less infractions, still major infractions, but less than the Democrats, and we're calling the bullshit out. It's like we're the rank and file in the Democrat Party calling this bullshit out.
So I look at what was happening now with Trump's campaign in the state of Minnesota. I firmly believe that Minnesota was at play, and that's why they had to have Walz as the VP pick, because they needed a few criteria. They needed a few identities. They probably wanted a white Midwestern governor. He's also very socialist, so he fits in with their agenda. But I would think they were afraid of Minnesota going red.
Yeah.
I think they were very much afraid of that. So now when the Trump campaign comes in and they say we have to put this structure into place to help this candidate, and any of our statewide candidates, we have to have this structure in place. That's the BPOUs. That's the grassroots.
Right.
We have to, I think we do need to do a better job with our vetting. I think we have to have criteria, say half dozen different criteria points rather than open-ended questions, and explain to the delegates what it takes. We need to educate as well. This is what it takes to win a statewide race. We're not just, in greater Minnesota, the viewpoints are going to be different than in the metro. We have suburban candidates that are different than just 30 miles away. We have to look at a bigger picture, and we also have to say, with anything else, you have criteria, you have things that you look at. Let's educate the delegates. Let's get candidates that we can win in statewide races, and then let's utilize those BPOUs and that grassroots to fire people up. The Trump campaign right now is saying, go get your 10, 25 signs and you talk to these people who are low propensity voters. Well, if you're a BPOU chair, captain, any of the members there, you're known in your community as somebody who's political. You're going to have your Trump signs out in front of your yard. You're going to be active, and people are going to come and ask you questions. That's what we need to build up in this state. I think we could flip this state if we simply start working together. Now, is there going to be confrontation? Is there going to be differences of opinion? Absolutely.
Yeah, it can happen. So what? We move on, right?
Exactly.
We got to respect the process. We got to respect, the people that are coming in, and we can't just root them out. And I think that's what you make a great point on, is it does seem to be very much stacked against the little man, so to speak.
Well,
and
I talked to
it's like,
somebody.
well, that's not a way to build a party up.
Right. I talked to somebody just the other day who would be at the opposite end of the spectrum when it comes to Republican viewpoints. They view themselves as Republican, are going to run as a Republican, but in my backyard, they would be a Democrat, but also says we need to win with statewide races. Now, can we sit down and have a discussion? Absolutely. Do we disagree? Sure we do. But it's kind of like I would compare Colin Peterson's race against Michelle Fischbach. Peterson was well liked out in that area. He was on the Ag Committee. Farmers voted for him. Even though they were conservative, he was Democrat. You had to take a step, and we flipped that. They had tried with other candidates before Michelle Fischbach who were more conservative, but it wasn't enough to win that over. In this state, we have to get together. We have to support those candidates. We've got to, I think we need to improve how we endorse candidates, educate those delegates, if we're ever going to have a chance to win the state back. Does it start at the bottom? I think it does.
All right, so let me evoke your dad's philosophy here for a second.
Sure.
Mike, you bring up some really good issues. What are you going to do about it?
Well, that's part of why I'm here.
Okay, what are you going to do about it?
So
You're a state rep. It's not like we're just talking about talking to some guy off the street here. You do.
So I do a podcast now. We talk about not just politics, but traditional family values, a little bit of everything. We need to connect with the younger voters, younger people in our state. We tend to lean towards a certain demographic, and we need to start pulling young people in. I get enthused every time we do an event, and we see 18 to 25-year-olds there. It's almost unheard of. Mm-hmm. So the other thing, I think that's huge, reaching voters where they are. The podcast is something I'm doing. Spending time in the metro. Because if we don't have a long-term plan of winning in the metro, at least building something there, we're going to keep losing. Mm-hmm. And if that's time, we went down and interviewed 4 different candidates down in the metro who are in very tough races. Very tough. And they're going to have a struggle, uphill struggle. But if we don't start making inroads in the metro, that's a long-term goal that we have to start doing. You have to start laying that groundwork. That's the grassroots.
I guess my question is more specific towards, because that's just general strategy and how Republicans can win statewide or turn out the vote more. But you see a problem. HRCC, we've discussed this in length. What are you going to do about this? I mean, obviously you're not fine with the way things are going, your personal experience and what you saw this election cycle. You are maybe a member of the HRCC, unknown at this point, but definitely a state representative. You're in the Republican caucus. What are you going to do to fix this?
Thanks for putting me on the spot. And I think, okay,
well,
so
it's fair. Maybe you don't have the answer yet, but I think it's fair if you get back to us on it. Let's take a couple examples
of what I have done. I invited Jimmy Gordon in. Mm-hmm. I talked to those endorsed candidates and said, come on in. And I caught a lot of heck for that. Just having him in to the Capitol ruffled some feathers.
Like you come in the caucus room, stuff like that to me.
Taking a picture with Gary Stewart ruffled some feathers. He's an endorsed Republican candidate, wanted to take a picture. So does that cause problems? Simply asking for the rules and the bylaws. Yeah.
How long ago did you ask for those?
It was towards the end of last session. Well, and actually that had to do with...
Or was it 2023 session?
Well, so it was a while ago.
It was a while ago.
Who did you direct that to?
Leadership.
So Lisa Damuth, I'm assuming we're talking about here then?
Well, actually, I asked from Wagner.
Oh, Andrew Wagner, so a staffer. And so essentially you've asked for it in a period of time and have no follow-up from them.
I have yet to get a copy of the rules.
Have you gone back and asked for it again just in case they had forgotten the request?
I think I've asked for it twice now.
Okay. Have you asked then why you haven't received it?
Well, truth be told, I've requested a lot of information that I have not gotten. A simple one.
So if you request information and you don't get it and you don't do anything about it, you see how nothing will ever change?
Well, because you haven't seen me asking for stuff and requesting stuff and doing stuff doesn't mean it's not getting done either.
Okay, so you do have a belief that it's getting done then?
I hope that enough pressure and continuing pressure will make change.
And when you ask or make this request, do they give you the belief that it exists?
Well, a prime example would be after the endorsements, and I asked for a simple list of the endorsed Republican candidates across the state. I wanted to reach out to as many as I could just to talk to them.
We could find that on the Republicans' website.
I understand.
How about the bylaws and the Constitution of the HRCC? Have you been given the impression it exists?
Actually, I was told from an old legislator, because I sought more information, an ex-legislator, that they do exist.
Okay.
And that was
But when you asked the staffer, I mean, that person gave you the belief
that there was no rules or bylaws.
Oh, so wait a second. So they gave you that impression?
That was the impression I got. Because if I broke some rule by inviting an
you essentially did get the answer to your question then, that it doesn't exist. You were asking for something.
That was the impression that I got, yes. That was what I was basically told. When I started asking other legislators if we have rules and bylaws, and some of them said, well, we got a copy of it. I have yet to get that from anybody. But
Okay,
when I
so it
talked
seems
to an
like
old
a
legislator.
valid course of action for you here then.
Well, first
would
you got to
be
find out if there is something.
Well,
that
no, it sounds
exists
like
out
you
there.
just concluded that they're not. I think we can read between the lines that they don't exist. I think the valid question or valid course of action for you,
Where do you
No,
guys.
I don't think that's
Do you
accurate.
believe they exist?
I believe they exist. I'm sure they
Oh, you
exist.
do?
I mean, the Minnesota State Constitution exists, right? Tim Walz does what he wants. He shuts down businesses. He closed down churches. It doesn't mean the Constitution doesn't exist. It means nobody had the balls to say, Tim Walz, we're not going to let you run roughshod over our rules, and we're going to demand that you follow the Constitution. And so what we need,
We
just like,
know, but
just
we
like
can point
Tim
to
Walz
it.
did whatever he wanted
Yeah, but we can
in
point to it. I have
right.
never seen these things.
Right,
I
well,
could find
I'm
the
sure
Minnesota
I'm sure
Republican Party Constitution.
I'm sure they exist. They exist, and they don't get followed. And so I think first people step up and, like Mike, ask for them, and they get pushed aside. And they'll push people aside.
Yeah, but
even
hold on.
if
They
people start
exist, but where? Like, you say they exist. Are they in the locked box in the bottom
they might
dungeon
be
of
in-
the Capitol? Like,
Josh Heinzman and Lisa's desk, and maybe
so
Heinzman
it's
and-
only exists in a physical
and
copy?
Isaac Schultz probably all have a little binder
Well-
with the rules and bylaws. No, I mean, they very well might. Jake, I mean, why not? Why wouldn't Heinzman and Damath and Schultz have a little binder that has all the rules and all the people that are doing this stuff?
Because I actually don't believe there are rules, because there really is no need for rules. It's just a handful of people that take over this powerful position and use
But
it.
if it's a political party,
There's
it
rules,
still
they
has
just
to be
might not be
structured like a
followed.
corporation,
Correct. Yes.
doesn't it?
Yes.
Okay, so then there
And
has
so
to be
you
rules.
are asking, you were having a reasonable request. You just said to me, you don't believe. You got the impression from the staffer that they don't exist.
Right. That might not, well, just because they gave me that impression does not necessarily mean they don't exist.
Okay, so
then the other thing I'll say.
So
and
then
I-
you would
I
just go
talked
find
to-
someone that knows a little bit better than the staffer.
So I asked recently a legislator who has retired for some time about rules, bylaws, constitution. They said, yes, they exist. Because at one time they were looking at changing them and the verbiage on some of those rules and bylaws. I said, oh, that's interesting. So now I have to go back and find out for sure what are rules, bylaws, where they're written, where they're kept, who has them.
We'd love to have you on the show and discuss that when you do that, because from our vantage point, they don't exist. We haven't seen them yet. No one's seen. We've had
I know
no.
you're down to about 12 minutes left, so we got so much that we could be discussing. We definitely should have on your show again when you come figure that out. But I guess my thing is, I know that you have said more emphatically than Walter did. You know, we got to stop this. And I was talking with senators in the past after they spent $1 million or whatever SVF, against DePel and cost us a Senate majority. And there is a majority of senators that claim to be against doing that, right? Not only just Wiesenberg and Liskey, but Lucero and Barr and Drazkowski and Gruenhagen. So they all say that we shouldn't do that, right? So there are 17 out of the 33, which is a majority of senators, say we got to stop doing this. But they won't stand up because they have a literal majority, but they won't stand up and demand it, even though they're in the majority. And I know that you've said, Walter said, oh, we're changing minds. We got all these freshmen. We're starting, and that's great. I mean, it is a great step. But somehow we have to do it quickly before we get to another cycle of the same thing. How do we organize those people and have the majority? Because I think the majority would be with you and Walter in that position to say that we got to stop this. So how do we stop it?
Well, and these are good questions, but let's be honest. I've only been around politics for 2 years. I couldn't tell you what the HRCC was or did, 2 years ago. When we went in to elect officers and they talked about the exec committee, I said, I don't know what that is. I had never been involved with anything. I hadn't been included in any conversations. So why haven't I done anything? I've been here 2 years and I probably asked more questions than other sitting representatives have.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
Well, it's
does
time
that-
to get answers now, right?
Well, exactly.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's fine. I think, yes, I think things are moving. I think we have a long ways to go. Absolutely. I'm going to be outspoken about these things. I want to know if I have broken an unwritten rule, which I was told I did by inviting an endorsed candidate in. Well, I said, if it's an unwritten rule, it needs to be written down.
Yeah.
Because I did not break a rule then. I broke somebody's feelings maybe.
Right.
But those candidates, we have to make this experience with our BPOUs, with new candidates, all this stuff, a much more welcoming experience. Whether our viewpoints are the same or not, we have to talk about those things. But when we automatically push people away, when we label them, we're going to keep losing the state. We're just going to create more division, more problems, by treating people the way I was treated. So have I tried to do better? Yes, I have. I feel like, has that changed some people's opinion in the caucus? I hope so. But coming on here today, like I said, opening up myself for another set of attacks just by being on your show, which is fine.
Walter actually said, I didn't really get much flack for coming on the show. But, I think people realize that having a conversation is actually a pretty good thing,
Well,
it's so dangerous to do that nowadays, like whatever.
I appreciate coming on and getting a chance to voice my opinion on this. Because we need to do better.
We absolutely do. And I just think if it's a political party unit, they should be following some set of rules, and they shouldn't be working against the endorsed candidate, And I think you are making a great point. Walter made this point too. If it's $1.3 million that was blown in these safe Republican districts of all, I think everyone was a safe Republican district other than maybe McNew and Bonehead. Then
That one's
yes,
going to be a tight race.
that's a tight race. Yeah, but all these Republican red districts like Cretia, it's like that's a waste of money.
There was 2 primaries that were not absolute safe districts. One is Pulowski's district, and the other one was Bonehead.
Johnson. Yeah,
But the other ones that there was primaries were all either safe or safe Republican or safe Democrat. But the Pulowski one was also, is also a swing district. Obviously.
I really wonder which way that's going. I have no good read on it. Well, thanks for coming on, Mike. We appreciate it very much, making the trip down to the cities. I know you're up from greater Minnesota, the better part of the state.
God's country. It's beautiful up there.
It really is God's country, Trump country. All right,
if we can get more answers, as soon as he gets more answers for us,
we'll bring you back on. Yeah, I want some more answers on this stuff.
I think definitely, and not to, I don't want to dismiss anything about like what you've done, because you're saying, you're in there trying to get answers. I know I've been talking with you since you got elected, right? So, trying to ask for bylaws, ask for this, find the powers that be are trying to recruit candidates and push candidates for endorsement over other ones and all these kinds of things. You've been trying to speak up for the grassroots, right? And I know that, but I think in the next, even if we spend the next 5 weeks trying to just win a majority, if at all possible, after what they've done, within days of the election, we have to have some kind of a plan, I think, to hold them accountable. Because what I said to Walter is people are not going to believe it again, right? They're not, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. And people 2 years ago wanted to challenge Roger Scraba and Danny Nadeau and Myers and all these people because Jeff Whitty, because they say they're rhinos. And I and many others shared the exact same thing that Walter and what the HRCC's vision is supposed to be, which is to win a majority. He said, look, if we primary these things with conservative, Scrabble won by 13 votes, we'll probably lose the seat. Even if somebody beats him in a primary, they lose the general, or one of them loses, or whatever. So let's just we'll let the conservatives come out of 10A and in places like that, and then.
Well, let me say this, and this is something else that I think should be changed, because after November 5th, after the election, the caucus gets together and decides leadership. I think there's a flaw in that.
Oh yeah.
Last year, or 2 years ago rather, 25 new freshmen who don't know hardly any of the senior legislators, and now you're expected to decide who's going to be the leadership. I think there at least needs to be a week or two where we sit down and
very reasonable request on that
meet
one,
the
Mike.
people who want to be in leadership.
Yep.
So we get to know them. Now we're going to have another
perhaps it's
batch.
by design that they don't do it that way. I guess in the end of the day, Doubt pissed off so many people that it didn't matter. He wasn't going to keep a hold on his leadership position.
Theoretically, leadership could be changed at any time.
Yeah.
Theoretically.
True.
It's literally, I know I'm on CD2. We got a full committee vote again on Tuesday, right? There's vote every single month. Should we endorse Joe Tayrab? Every single month it fails, But there's every single month though there's a new vote. There's something. It's not like you guys are a caucus. You can vote anytime to kick out your leadership. You could vote to kick out members if you want.
Tushy, speaking of Joe Tayrab, we do need to move on to our next segment so we can get this in. Thank you very much, Mike Wiener, Mr. Liberty Longwind, prolonging our show more than necessary, but we will bring you back when we get some more answers, Mike.
Sure.